If you believe these stories must be remembered, subscribe to Echoes of Valor and help keep history alive.
At 5:42, the Burmese jungle looked almost peaceful. Mist folded between the teak trees. The air was still, and nothing moved except the drifting ash from last night's campfires. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a quiet morning. But to Corporal David Halpern of Merrill's Marauders, the stillness wasn't calm. It was warning. Halpern lay prone on a narrow ridge overlooking the valley floor, his cheek pressed against the worn stock of his Springfield M1903. The rifle was old, starred, and heavier than anything a sniper would willingly choose. He hated it, but it was the only weapon available that could still hold at zero in this humid, unforgiving world. In Burma, everything rotted. Boots, rations, maps, men. Only steel and discipline survived. Below him, a Japanese forward scouting detachment was moving through the trees. Halpern counted 6. They advanced methodically, rifles raised, eyes scanning the canopy. Their reputation preceded them, patient, precise, and lethal. But they were missing something, someone, because Halpern had already killed their sniper at dawn. A single clean shot from 310 yards. No sound, no alarm, just a body dropping quietly into the leaves like it had fallen asleep.
That shot changed the battlefield. Without a sniper to counter him, Halpern owned this valley. But he knew better to celebrate. Japanese doctrine didn't collapse with one death. It adapted. At 05:47, the point man paused. His posture stiffened slightly, an almost microscopic shift, invisible to anyone who hadn't lived months stalking and being stalked. Halpern saw it instantly. The man sensed something he couldn't name. Maybe a glint, maybe a shadow, maybe nothing. But intuition was the most dangerous weapon in Burma. Halpern exhaled, steady and slow. His heartbeat settled into a rhythm, aligning with the rise and fall of his breath. Through the scope he adjusted 1 millimeter left, compensating for a faint crosswind threading through the wet leaves. His first shot cracked through the morning air, punching into the point man's chest. Before the others reacted, he cycled the bolt, fired again, and dropped the soldier beside him. 2 seconds, 2 bodies. Lethal economy.
Then the jungle changed. The remaining Japanese soldiers didn't panic. They didn't shout. Instead, they melted into cover with terrifying precision. Within moments, Halpern no longer saw shapes. Only the slight shifts of leaves and the ripple of foliage disturbed by hidden movement. The hunt had begun. He slid backward into the shallow drainage cut behind the ridge, chest pressed into wet soil, rifle angled toward the tree line. The enemy wasn't retreating. They were spreading, enveloping, testing angles, feeling for holes in the terrain like water filling a basin. Halpern listened carefully. A soft footstep to his left, another ahead. A branch bending somewhere behind, too quiet, too deliberate. They were triangulating him. He checked his ammo. 5 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. Enough, if he made every shot count. In Burma, waste was death.
The mist thickened around him, blurring shapes, muffling sound. Perfect for snipers, perfect for ambushes, perfect for men determined to kill each other at close range. Halpern pushed deeper into the drainage cut, letting mud soak through his uniform. He steadied his breath and whispered to himself, a habit he'd picked up after too many silent nights. See before they see you. Move before they move. Shoot before they shoot. The next hour would decide whether he walked out of this valley or disappeared into it forever.
The valley didn't stay quiet for long. By 0610, the rest of Merrill's marauders, tired, hungry, and carrying more malaria than ammunition, were pushing through the undergrowth, following a trail Halpern had carved in gunfire. Captain Ellison moved at the front, machete tapping tree trunks, as if testing whether the jungle itself approved of their presence. The Marauders had been marching for 18 days straight. No resupply, no air-dropped crates, no fresh water except what they filtered through iodine tablets that stained everything bitter yellow. Their uniforms were torn, their boots dissolving, their bodies hollowed by fever. But they kept moving, because stopping was death. Halpern emerged from the drainage cut, mud-streaked and silent. His face was expressionless, as if nothing about the last 30 minutes had been extraordinary. Ellison studied him briefly. "How many?" the captain asked. "3 down," Halpern replied. "2 moving, but not for long." Ellison nodded. That was all the conversation they needed. The column pressed forward, but the jungle pushed back. Every vine felt like a tripwire. Every shadow looked like a rifle barrel. Every breath tasted like insects and damp earth. The marauders moved in single file, spaced out 10 feet apart, each man focused so intensely that their silence became a language of its own. Halpern took point, because no one else wanted it. The myth of the super sniper didn't exist here. In Burma, being point man meant dying first. But Halpern walked with a calm, steady stride, Springfield balanced across his chest. His senses were tuned to the jungle's pulse, a shift of leaves, a faint exhale, the soundless warning of an enemy watching from too close.
At 6:24, the jungle exhaled a threat. A single Japanese soldier hidden in a camouflaged firing pit fired a quick burst at the column. The marauders hit the ground instantly. Bullets snapped through branches, tearing apart leaves in a horizontal storm. Halpern didn't flinch. He dropped to one knee, pivoted smoothly, and fired once. The pit went silent. The jungle swallowed the echo. For most men, the adrenaline came in a wave, hot, shaking, uncontrollable. For Halpern, it was cold, focused, a narrowing of sight into a single line, target, breath, trigger. The marauders continued forward, and Halpern drifted to the rear briefly, scanning their trail. In Burma, the Japanese didn't just attack from the front. They shadowed, stalked, and squeezed their prey from behind. He found the tracks first, fresh, precise, intentional. "Scouts incoming. 3, maybe 4, Halpern murmured. Ellison didn't question him. Halpern's senses were worth more than any radio intercept. They moved again, faster now, pushing toward a ridge where they could secure high ground. Every man's breathing grew ragged. Their bodies were breaking. Jungle rot, dysentery, infected insect bites, but the mission didn't care. At 0703, the ridge appeared, a sliver of elevation, a temporary lifeline. But before the Marauders reached it, they heard it, a single, sharp whistle, a Japanese signal.
The trap was closing. Halpern sprinted forward, dirt spraying under his boots, Springfield bouncing against his shoulder. He slid behind a fallen teak trunk and scanned the far slope. Shadows moved between the trees, fast, low, deliberate. The Japanese were trying to flank them. He chambered around, exhaled, and began firing with the mechanical precision of a man who had surrendered every trace of fear long ago. One shot, shift left. Another shot, adjust for elevation, fire again. His rifle cracked like a heartbeat. Behind him, the Marauders steadied their lines, returning disciplined bursts into the forest. The valley echoed with gunfire, screams, and the deep thud of grenades detonating in damp soil.
For 30 minutes, the firefight churned through the ridge. The Marauders refused to break. The Japanese refused to retreat. And Halpern, half sniper, half shadow, moved through their formation like a ghost, appearing wherever the line wavered, killing with terrible clarity. By 0741, the shooting faded. The last Japanese soldier slipped into the trees and vanished into silence. The Marauders had survived, but barely. Ellison surveyed the ridge, sweat pouring down his dirt-streaked face. "We won't get another morning like this," he muttered. "They're testing us." Halpern wiped mud from the Springfield's bolt. "No," he said quietly, "they're studying us." And Halpern knew what that meant. The next battle wouldn't be a skirmish. It would be a hunt. And this time, he wouldn't be the only predator.
The ambush should have ended quickly, but Halpern felt the rhythm shift almost immediately. The jungle fell into an unnatural silence. No insects, no birds, only the muffled echo of his last shot dissolving into the mist. Silence in Burma was never safety. It was warning. Crouched inside a wall of cane grass, sweat running into his eyes, Halpern listened carefully. Beneath the humidity and his own heartbeat, he caught what he feared most: soft, controlled footsteps, more than one set. The Japanese weren't scattering, they were coordinating. By 0710, he spotted them, evenly spaced silhouettes moving in deliberate arcs, counter-sniper teams. They weren't hunting survivors, they were hunting him. Halpern eased backward through the brush, careful not to disturb the branches. A twig snapped 20 yards behind him, too precise to be random, too soft to be a mistake. The noose was already around him. Dropping into a narrow monsoon trench, he let the mud swallow his arms as he raised the Springfield. He waited without breathing until the first soldier stepped forward through the fog. One clean shot to the throat dropped the man instantly. But the response was immediate. 3 more rifles cracked from the flanks, bullets slashing the leaves above him. They'd waited for him to fire. Now they were bracketing his exact position, tightening the circle with every shot fired from the tree line.
Pinned in the trench with only 4 rounds left, Halpern forced himself to stay calm. He tracked the rhythm of their reloads, the whispered commands, the shift of boots in wet earth. 3 teams, 9 men, maybe more. Then a new sound, low, distant, rhythmic. American artillery. The Japanese formation faltered, voices rising in alarm. That moment of hesitation was all he needed. Halpern rolled from the trench and bolted toward the bamboo ridge as bullets cut the air behind him, shredding leaves into ribbons. He didn't look back. The jungle was collapsing around him, but he was still moving, still unseen, still alive. The hunt wasn't over, but neither was he.
By late morning, the valley had transformed into a maze of shifting shadows and silent threats. Halpern crawled along a narrow limestone shelf overlooking a dry creek bed, each movement deliberate, controlled, invisible. His uniform was soaked in mud, his breath shallow, his rifle heavier with every yard he pulled it across the rock. Behind him, the jungle still echoed with the disciplined, relentless advance of the Japanese counter-sniper teams. They had stopped trying to flush him out with gunfire. Now they relied on patience, listening for mistakes, waiting for him to panic. But Halpern didn't panic. He calculated. He counted the intervals between their movements, marked the angles of their approach, and studied the terrain with the cold precision of a man who had learned to survive by hours, not days. Ahead lay a ravine the Marauders called the Valley of No Return, a steep cut in the jungle where sound died and visibility collapsed into a blur of vines and darkness. To enter it meant losing all visual advantage, but staying on the ridge meant death. Halpern tightened the grip on the Springfield, watched the fog crawl up the slope like a living thing, and slid silently into the mouth of the ravine.
The rain arrived just before dawn, sweeping across the valley in heavy sheets that turned the jungle floor into a churning river of mud. Corporal David Halpern waited beneath an overhang of split bamboo, his rifle balanced across his knees, his body shaking from exhaustion he refused to acknowledge. He had been moving for nearly 16 hours, fighting, crawling, evading, listening for footsteps that came too close and whispers that died too quickly. The Japanese detachment hunting him had not broken off. They were still out there, patient and relentless. But they were also wounded, slower, and short one NCO, the one Halpern had dropped with a clean shot 3 hours earlier during a running fight along the ridge. But the jungle had taken its toll on him, too. His uniform was torn, he'd lost all but 6 rounds of ammunition, and his left shoulder screamed every time he raised the rifle. He knew he couldn't outrun them anymore. He couldn't hide forever. The only way out of this valley was through the patrol, kill the tracker, break the formation, and slip into the ravine while they scattered. The plan was desperate, but desperation had kept him alive in Burma longer than luck ever did.
At 6:13, he spotted movement. A single shape emerged from the curtain of rain, slow, deliberate, testing the ground with each step. The tracker. Halpern felt his pulse steady, his breathing flatten.
He lowered himself into the mud, pressing his cheek to the stock of the Springfield for what he already sensed might be the last time. The shot had to be perfect, and it had to be silent afterward. No follow-up, no second chance. Through the drifting rain, the man's silhouette sharpened just enough. Halpern inhaled, exhaled halfway, and squeezed. The shot cracked like a whip, swallowed by thunder. The tracker folded. Shouts echoed instantly. 3 voices, maybe 4. Halpern slid backwards into the ravine, boots skidding across wet stone, branches whipping his face as he let gravity tear him into the darkness below. Gunfire erupted from the ridge, rounds snapping past his shoulders, clipping ferns and vines as he disappeared into the trough of the valley. And then silence. No footsteps, no pursuit. The jungle swallowed the noise as if nothing had happened. Hours later, when Halpern finally reached the Allied listening post on the opposite ridge, bleeding, soaked, shaking, he carried with him confirmation of the Japanese troop movements that Merrill's Marauders desperately needed. In the official reports, his escape was reduced to 1 sentence, but men who fought in Burma knew the truth. The survival of the unit hinged on 1 exhausted sniper, 1 last perfect shot, and a valley that nearly claimed him.